Hey guys, Raging Rashaka here. I had a video that popped up a little earlier that I wanted to kind of react to. It's based off of the state of Path of Exile 2. Since I've been playing a lot of the game here lately, I just thought it would be interesting to get my perspective in on this. In my opinion, this guy's got a pretty hot take on what's going on with Path of Exile. There's a few things that he says that I agree with, but then there's a lot of things that he says that I think are just kind of baseless. So the video is The Ups and Downs of PoE 2, and it's by Ben. So we'll get right into that and get to some content here.
Law. I don't feel like I have the energy right now, but whenever I do want to actually give a proper
First thing I'd like to point out is he's doing a video about PoE 2, but the video that's playing in the background is all Path of Exile 1 from what I could tell. I only watched a small portion of this video before I decided that I actually wanted to do a reaction to it. So this is all everything that I saw was Path of Exile 1, which I don't know. It's kind of it, to me it just makes it look like this is exactly what he wants, which is he wants to play Path of Exile 1. And so that's what he's making his background video. And it's like, dude, if you're that into Path of Exile 1, play that. Stop complaining about Path of Exile 2.
PoE2 talk. I can give you a preview of what the first 5 words are going to be. I don't understand why PoE2 exists. That's where it started. You know what? Maybe I do have the energy. Maybe I do. The original scope for PoE2 was new campaign, new class, new ascendancies, new gems, and a new gem system, right? That was the original scope, but shared endgame. And when we think about PoE2, what is good, it is exclusively the things that I just said. It's the campaign. The one single thing that PoE2 actually does better than the first game is the new player experience in the campaign. It is so much fucking better.
You can tell by the way his voice is kind of jerky here and his screen's kind of cutting around. This guy made a much longer video and had to cut a lot of stuff. I personally think it's because he just couldn't come up with a clear and concise way to explain what it is that he wanted to say. I don't know. It's almost like he's just making this video for content and just trying to get, some buzzwords out there and get people pissed off about Path of Exile 2.
This game's campaign experience is fucking dog shit if you don't know what's happening. Vendors use 9 different currencies.
I'd also like to point out when he says this game, he's talking about Path of Exile 1. This is 100% accurate. The campaign playthrough Path of Exile 1 is 10 acts long. Everything that you do in the game, they have incorporated all of the seasons. The game has been out for 10 years. They did many iterations on the game before they got to the 10 act system that they have now. And then they've done season after season. You can wiki the seasons. I think they're up to 20 or 30 some odd seasons at this point. And every single season added new types of currencies or new types of mechanics to the game. And then they have incorporated these mechanics into the base game. So even if you're not playing on a season server and you're playing on their Eternal Realm, you're still dealing with all the previous season's mechanics and currencies, which really just bloat the game. And it makes it really difficult for a brand new player to get in and check out.
To buy things, gems, or 9 different currencies, it sucks. It's really bad. Whereas in PoE 2, the uncut skill gems and the vendors all being gold, it's so much easier to follow and understand what's happening. The hand holding of the gem system for recommended stuff, even though often it's not the best, is way better than here's a window with 95 gems in it, good fucking luck. The way the game kind of pushes you into these archetypes of lightning versus whatever else, it all kind of just, it's just.
I think it's funny how he talks about the concept of having PoE 1 having a vendor gem window that's got 95 gems in it. It's I mean, yeah, sure, you've got the uncut gems in Path of Exile 2, but when you right-click on one of them to go through the cutting process to actually make the gem that you want, yeah, it's only going to show you a handful of cuts that you could do at the beginning because it's got it broken into categories. But if you hit the all gems button at the bottom, there's tons of gems. I would say there's probably close to 90 of them in Path of Exile 2. That could be a slight exaggeration. I haven't actually gone and count them, but there's a bunch. So it's definitely not a tiny gem window. They do at least have the support gems and the active skill gems separated into two different types of uncut gems. So if you click one of them, you're only going to see all of the activated skills. And then the other type of gem, if you right click it, you're only going to see support gems. So that does kind of at least break them up into two categories where they don't cross over each other. But there's a ton of gems in the game, and there's also quite a few sections in there where they have placeholders for new gems that they're working on and designing. Plus, only half of the classes are in the game right now, which I would assume means they're going to add more skill gems that are a little more unique to some of the other classes. But yeah, there's tons of coming soon kind of placeholders in there for gems that they're working on but aren't out yet.
Way easier. The game is way easier to play if you don't know what's happening. And that's really good. And the moment you leave Act 3, or really Act 6 maybe, and start mapping, it just is bad. Like, if I think about every single change from the first game to the second game, I almost can't think of a single positive change when it comes to actual in-game content.
So, this guy is saying he can't think of a single positive change. One of the things that he's also talking about is just getting out of the acts, and I do agree that Act 1 through 3 is a really good story. The story is pretty cool. The act bosses were all really fun to fight. They were very unique compared to things that were being done in Path of Exile 1. And it's one of those things where, sure, the end game is a little bit lackluster when you actually move into it after doing the campaigns. But they've been working on the campaigns for a long time. They're polished. Acts 1 through 3 is a pretty polished experience. You know, the developers have already stated that they really wanted to have content at end game for people to be able to mess around with, and they created these, you know, like this end game system in just a handful of months for people to kind of check out and give them something to do, because you're buying into an early access game to get into this. It's not free currently. You have to buy a $30 package to get into it. Fortunately, that package gives you currency, which you can use in Path of Exile 1 if you decide you don't like Path of Exile 2, which I think is phenomenal. So you spend $30 and it's like, well, if you don't like this game, you can use the currency in this other game. I mean, that's great in my opinion. I wish more game companies did that. I don't know how many times I've done an early access and I'm like, this game's crap. I wish I'd never bought it. But anyways, uh, the end game is very tacked on at the moment. I mean, it's not fleshed out in any way. This game is in early access, and he does nothing but compare Path of Exile 2 to Path of Exile 1. For one, it's called Path of Exile 2 because it's not Path of Exile 1. Number two, Path of Exile 1 has had 10 years development cycle. I mean, I played Path of Exile 1 in the very early stages back when it was played like old school Diablos, where you had 3 different difficulties and you played through the same 3 acts. You played through all 3 on normal difficulty, and then you restarted at the first act on the second difficulty, and all of your resistances were dropped. And then you played through those 3 acts again, go back to the beginning, and then go to the even higher difficulty and play through it again. It was almost identical to Diablo 2 and Diablo 3. I mean, it was a very similar experience. And then they added Acts 4 and 5, and then they also got rid of the replay through system, and then they made a pseudo replay through system where you, instead of doing Acts 1 through 3 over and over, you just did Acts 1 through 5, and then you did another playthrough of Acts 1 through 5, but they called them 6 through 10, and they were different. The maps were different. The storyline was different. It was the same assets and the same like world map, the same areas you were going to, but each individual map that you were going into wasn't necessarily identical to the first one. So Act 6 and Act 1 were, you know, kind of paired acts. You were supposed to be in the same area of the world in the gameplay, but the maps weren't identical, and it wasn't the identical story, and it was unlocking new stuff. It was, I mean, leagues different from what it was when the game first came out. I mean, they made massive sweeping changes, and then they started adding all the season systems, which just compounded more and more and more. The early access for this game is intended to be 6 months to a year long before this is considered to be in a launchable ready state, which means we're 2 months in. This video literally came out 2 days ago. This is currently January the 30th. So, I mean, this came out on the 28th. This is 2 months after launch, the majority of which was through holidays when they were working on nothing because it's the holidays. And then when he talks about the concept of there being no iteration or no renovation, whatever you want to call it, on the gameplay, just the simple concept that they went from essentially a black and white map for mapping in Path of Exile 1 to where you opened up your map system and you just have all of these generic maps that are in there, and they have a very limited space on the world where they go. The map's basically gray with little, like just little dots that are connecting them all together, and there's no visual aspect to it whatsoever. To me, that was just very boring. It was kind of a dull part of the game, especially considering the fact that it basically didn't change from the point that they added mapping into Path of Exile 1. And then Path of Exile 2, when you first get into mapping, you have this big lush map with all sorts of different areas on them. The areas are broken up into, actual like regions on a planet. And you have desert regions and you have forest regions. And the other thing to think about as well is we still only have Acts 1 through 3, which means Acts 4, 5, and 6 are coming before launch, which will add more tile sets into the game. It's going to improve things in the game. It's going to give more variable stuff in order for people to mess around with in the game, and it will make the end game map have more content to it, more diverse areas. So, I mean, because they don't even have like the Aztec ruin kind of concept. Those don't even really show up that much in maps, if at all. I haven't really seen the Aztec tile set show up in any of the maps that I've done. I'm probably somewhere between 500 and 1,000 maps run. So there's still a lot of room that they have to improve. But, I mean, just the map itself looks so much better than what they had in Path of Exile 1. And it's also has some level of infinite growth to it. I mean, the map in Path of Exile 1 was very limited. Pretty much the whole thing fit on a single screen. This one you actually have to scroll around. It kind of feels like you're going somewhere. So I don't know. I like it a lot better personally.
Like, the change from killing a map boss to killing all rares, who wants that? Like, every time I hit tab and scroll through a map trying to find the rare that's hiding in the corner.
So he brings up another topic here. Who wants to kill all the rares versus a boss? Me. I'm one of those guys that I like the new system for mapping. I hated the concept of having a boss on every single map in Path of Exile 1. I know people like killing bosses, but right now this game has way too many negatives in it, which they have said in a developer note that they plan to address at some point. But right now you only get one death in a map, and if you die, then you're locked out of that map, and you have to start up another map on the same node to keep progressing on the world map. In addition to that, you still take XP loss on death. So, that's one of the things that they're talking about is they weren't intending for both of those negatives to exist at the same time. It was supposed to be one or the other. And for whatever reason, they are really liking the one portal system where you get one death and then the map closes and you have to open a new one. I personally am not a big fan of that. There's too many random things that can happen. I mean, I've seen things where you just randomly get popped because you made a slight mistake, or there was a noise that was made. I had my cats freaked out one day, and I turned to look at them and died instantly because I didn't move out of something on the ground. That's not a good feeling for a game. You don't want things going on in real life that take your attention for literally 1 second, maybe two, and it causes you to just die in the game and then lose access to your map. I think one of the best ways that they could kind of alleviate this is, at the very least, they can make it to where if you die in a map, all of the resources that were on the ground are sent to your bank. Or just make it to where if you die in a map, then all of the creatures are instantly despawned and they don't respawn, and you can go back through one of the remaining portals and pick up all the stuff off the ground that you want. Because dying in a map when you have things laying on the ground, especially with the way a lot of the mechanics work in this game has Breach in it. It's got Delirium in it. Both of these things are events that you want to do where you don't want to pick up anything on the ground while the event's going on. You don't want to be stopping while you're doing delirium and picking up things. You just want to run, 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 kill, 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 because that's all about filling up a rewards meter. And you do that by killing stuff, and you have a time limit on it. So you don't want to be wasting that precious time picking shit up off the ground. The same with the breaches. The faster you kill in breaches, the longer your breach stays open. Granted, there is a diminishing returns to that, so you would have to kill, billions of enemies basically to keep the breach going for much longer than what it does on average. But you still want to get as many kills as earthly possible, and the more kills you're getting, the slightly increases to time that you're getting for the breach staying open. That being said, you don't want to pick up anything off the ground during those two events, so you want to leave all the shit on the ground. And if you just randomly get popped by something, then there's tons of loot that you just lost that you actually kind of earned, but it just stripped it all from you. And it not only is that part of it bad, but then just think of how bad it would be is if you were doing that and you were killing a bunch of stuff and you saw a Mirror of Kalandra drop. Yeah, a lot of people are going to say, well, I'd just run over and pick that up. But when you're used to just running around and killing everything, maybe you don't think about it. Maybe you didn't get it. Or maybe the moment that you died, something else died from the sparks, and a mirror drops on the ground after you've already lost control of your character from death, and then you can't go pick it up. I mean, just imagine how shitty that would make you feel as a player. Me personally, I've been having a great time with the game, and if that kind of thing happened, I probably would stop playing for a while. Like that would be enough to be like, okay, that felt really bad. That really sucked, and I'm not interested in playing right now. So, yeah, I do kind of agree with some of the problems that he's talking about, but there's been a lot of iteration on this game. So
To kill to get progress, like it's just bad. The map bosses aren't in every map. Why? Map bosses are cool. They're fun. Why can I go in?
yeah, that was the other thing that I wanted to say. We're still talking about map bosses here. One of the problems with map bosses in Path of Exile 1 is because they had so many different map bosses, they eventually kind of became rock paper scissors for certain builds. Like you would make one kind of build that just literally could not kill a map boss. So you either had to get someone else to come in to help with your map, or if you needed progression for clearing that map, you just had to wait until you super out leveled it so that your character was powerful enough to basically just one-shot the boss at the end of the map so that you could get credit and move on, because they basically had one boss for every single kind of map in the game, and I think there were like 118 maps or something like that. So it's 118 different bosses. You also had to memorize all their move sets, which if you grew with the game, that was fine. That's not a big deal. But if you're brand new to the game and somebody just throws 118 bosses at you, and then you get, 5 months, 4 months to play through all of the content, it's like you're not going to know how to do anything. You're not going to be able to get to end game. You're not going to be able to do the really fun stuff in the game your first season playing, maybe even your second season playing. And so that's not good for new players. So having different types of ways to finish maps, I think, is a good idea. I wouldn't necessarily want every single map to just be chase down all the rares either. I like the variety. I like that you have you've got the towers. They're mildly boring, but I mean, I've gotten some good loot out of towers as well. And they're just run to the end of the map and click a thing. Map is completed. And then you have the find all the rares and kill them. So you don't have to worry about bosses on those maps. You just kill all the yellow rares and you're done. And they actually mark them on the map. That's one thing that people seem to glaze over when they're talking about how awful this system is. It seems to be a ratio of the amount of rares left compared to the amount of overall enemies left. When that ratio goes upside down, so you've killed a whole bunch of regular enemies, but you haven't killed many of the rares, all of the rares appear on the map. They're both on the large map, and then they're on your mini map as well. And so you can see exactly where they're at. It even gives you directional pointers going like, here's skulls all over the place. Here's the directions you need to go to find them. You hit tab to make your map bigger, and it's like, here's exactly where they're standing. And then you can just run around and clear them all. And that's it. I mean, it's not like you're on some sort of a wild goose chase and you don't have any idea where these things are and you're having to crawl across the whole map with no indicators whatsoever. The game does really well about telling you where to go and what to do as far as clearing out the maps. And then the ones that have bosses, you do get bosses on a lot of these maps, and you can use precursor tablets that add bosses to maps. So yeah, I mean, the bosses are still there. Not to mention, we're still in early access. There's still only 3 acts, which means they have 3 more acts that they're going to be adding to the game, which will add a handful of new bosses to the game, which will also go into these rotations so that there will be even more bosses and maps to do. And I think this is all a good direction. I think having the rares to kill is a good thing. I think having the map bosses to kill is a good thing. And I think having a map that you just walk through and click a thing at the end and then you're done is a good thing. Multiple different ways to finish maps, even if they're not, even if you don't have multiple ways to finish the same map, but just having some variety, in my opinion, is way better than just, okay, run through the map, kill everything that you can kill, and then go kill the boss, or just make a beeline straight for the boss so you can get this map done and then move on. It was just very boring and very dull in Path of Exile 1. So I don't know why this guy's bashing on, so much on just having variety.
Tower without fighting one sometimes. It just makes no sense. Towers? Jesus Christ. Sections got depreciated because they were tedious, and sections are like 1,000 times better than towers. Map layouts? Like, the worst PoE 1 map layout is S plus in PoE 2. I didn't
See, I think this is a bad comment on his part as well. So I definitely have my reservations about some of the maps. They don't flow very well in some cases, and like some of them have really nasty dead ends where you'll go down a really long path and then it's a dead end and then you have to backtrack. I really would rather that they get rid of all the major dead ends and the map should be pretty cohesive. You should be able to run around the map in a clockwise or counterclockwise system, killing everything as you're moving. There's way too many maps right now in Path of Exile 2 that are just tons of little hallways or tons of little pathways, and you just have to run down each one of these little pathways. The little Ewok village place, if you guys have played the game, you know which one I'm talking about. All the pathways, you're basically in some sort of a tree city, and like that is the most annoying map in the entire game in my opinion, because there's just like a million pathways and they just kind of cross all over the place, and you have tons of little dead ends and the map takes forever to clear. Fortunately, they increased the mob density and they increased the number of rares and stuff in those maps. I've had as many as like 16 rares in that map. So it takes a long time to clear, but I mean, at the end of the day, isn't that kind of the goal, is you want to kill stuff? Even I'm complaining about this, but then thinking about what I'm saying while I'm saying it, if you had the option to go through load screens for 3 different maps, or just have one really big map where you could just go through and kill everything and not have to go through load screens and not have to go back to town, not have to apply another map, isn't that actually better? So, yeah, while it seems kind of annoying that the maps are huge and it takes forever to run through them, I mean, in reality, that's a lot less load times and things along those lines. So, yeah, my complaint about that is even kind of moot after thinking about it, listening to myself saying it. So, yeah.
didn't even think it was possible to design map layouts that are so unfun. And checkpoints got added? Jesus, man. Fucking checkpoints. The moment people started asking for checkpoints in maps, that should have been infinite fucking red flags.
I agree with this take. Like I said, I think there are too many pathways and it's too difficult to move around the map and clear everything as you're going. You have too many pathways, too many splits in the road where you have to make a decision. So you take the left fork and then it turns out the right fork had a rare at the end of it that you didn't know. I almost kind of feel like they should just make the rares visible from the beginning so you know exactly where it is that you need to go. So while you're in the general vicinity, you can take that rare out, and then there's really no need to backtrack at that point. So you don't really need to portal around all that much. The other thing that's really big that kind of frustrates me is when you're looking at map markers, like if you get close to a breach, it's got that little hand of Chiyula that's sticking up out of the ground, or the ritual altars, it shows the icon for the ritual altars on your map. But then once you get a little bit away from them, they disappear. Once you've discovered that shit, it should stay on your map so you know exactly where you need to go. I don't know how other people do it. I personally like to clear out a huge area around breaches, kill every single creature in that general vicinity. Sometimes I even prefer to go clear the whole map to get the map completion first, and then I will come back and do rituals or come back and do breaches, just as a one-off. And when you have to go back and try to find those things, it's really frustrating. And I get it that a lot of people will just do the breaches as they come across them, or they'll just do the rituals as they come across them. I personally prefer to do it the other way around, and then there are some people that are newer to the game or just don't have good builds or whatever that may be afraid to do some of these missions because they're worried that they're going to get killed in them. I mean, rituals, if you don't have a decent build where it spawns a crapload of creatures really quickly on you, rituals can delete your character really fast if you don't have a good build or you're not prepared for them coming out. Breaches are kind of the same way. When you trigger the hand, you're more likely to die in the first 10 seconds than you are at any other point. Actually, I would say the first 5 seconds than you are at any other point during the breach, because you just go from there being no creatures, it's this tiny little area, and then all of a sudden they just start appearing and piling on you. So if you can't clear those out really quickly, there's a good chance that you could just die right at the beginning, especially if a rare spawns, in that initial group, which can happen. So it's just a thought there.
Exploding out of every single corner. If layouts are so dog shit that players want checkpoints, that needs to be like a complete redesign of how layouts work. It's like, how are 80% of layouts like unrunnable? Like fucking Mire, like Augury, the way loot works in the end game, 95% of all items drop from rare monsters. Every single trash monster, there's no reason to kill it except for experience. It won't drop loot. It will never drop none of that matters. And like the breach.
Okay, this is completely incorrect and invalid. Maybe you won't see good items as far as like, oh, a crossbow drop that has amazing rolls on it. You're more likely to see those off of rares than you are anything else. But the ads drop currencies with no problems. I mean, I get currencies from them all the time. I get gems from them all the time. I mean, even like his argument of like, oh, even if you're doing breaches, there's no reason to kill anything that's not rares. It's like the regular creatures drop crap loads of breach splinters. I mean, you need those to be able to make breach stones to go fight the breach boss. I mean, it's just like, it's almost like I said, this guy didn't really think through what he was talking about and just had a couple of minor complaints and just decided he wanted to blast the game for whatever reason. He's upset with it, or he's mad because it's not Path of Exile 1. I don't know, but I mean, I can't complain about drops of regular creatures at all. I get divs that drop from regular creatures fairly regularly. They drop Chaos Orbs and Exalted Orbs like non-stop. Maybe this guy just doesn't have the right build for rarity, which if you want to understand rarity better, I did make a video about improving your loot. Maybe go check that out if you're having problems with getting drops. But yeah, like I am not having the same experience that this guy is having, and I don't know, I'm pretty close to 300 hours in the game at this point, so I don't know how many hours he's played in it, or how much research he's done and worked on improving his character, but it sounds like he's missing a whole lot of stuff, or just tailoring this conversation to make it fit his narrative and isn't being completely truthful about the situation. One of the two, I don't know.
Problem as well, like 90% of all loot comes from breaches. And like so much of the shit is like, oh, you can hand me the away with, oh, it's early access. But is it really? Like, I mean, to me, when I hear like early access / beta, what I think is this is an unfinished game that's going to be changed a lot constantly. It's been 2 months. What's changed?
I mean, this guy is talking about this. They literally launched the game in like super late November, early December. So I know they were away for the holidays. They took a month off. So he's whining about it only being 2 months. They did quite a few micro updates before the holidays hit to try to make sure that the game was stable. They had server stability issues, and they had some minor, I don't really want to call them bugs, but they had some game-breaking combinations of skills and stuff where certain classes could just do insane stuff, and it was causing lag on the servers. They fixed all those insane things. Those classes are still very playable. The Archmage, which I'm playing as my main currently, is one of the classes that got nerfed for Cast on Shock. The class is still, in my opinion, way better than the Infernalist that I started out with, which was an insanely powerful character, and this one is even more powerful in my opinion. And this was after the nerf, so I mean it's still a lot of fun to play. A lot of people whined about the nerfs in the beginning, but I think they were just whining because they were nerfed. It wasn't really because it made them weaker. The class is insanely broken, and they either need to bring a lot of the other classes up to match what this class is doing, or they need to tone this class down a little bit. But to me, it is a lot of fun to play right now. but yeah, I mean they came out with quite a few updates and things like that, micro updates before they went on the holiday. And then they went on a holiday. There was literally nothing being done in the background. They were spending time with their families. Like I get it that holidays are a big time for people to play games and they're sitting around playing the games nonstop because they don't have school, they don't have work. It's just a lot of free time that people have. But you got to understand is you're not working, which also means they aren't working. They are at home playing games. They are at home, goofing off with their family and stuff like that and having family time. They're not working on Path of Exile 2 during that window. Literally zero forward progress was probably made during that point. And then they came back and immediately got to work and then launched this massive update that fixed tons of bugs in the game, tons of broken maps and issues that they had. Since that update has come out, I haven't really run into a broken map at all, with the exception of one map. When you first go into it, the one of the starting checkpoints that is like right there when you appear in the map is actually in the middle of a bunch of trees, so you can't access that checkpoint. And maps generally only have 2 checkpoints in it, so it makes the other checkpoint moot, because even if you access that one, you can't teleport back because you were never able to activate the first one. But that being said, it's kind of moot on that particular map anyways. But yeah, that's the most broken thing that I have seen since their major bug fix patch came out. And then they're actively working on stuff in the background right now. They have tons of other stuff they're trying to get fixed. They've released a video regarding Path of Exile 1 and how they were planning on releasing more content for Path of Exile 1, but they're having a really hard time doing that right now because they had to move the majority of the PoE Team 1 over to PoE 2 to fix all the issues that they didn't see coming. This is what early access is about, and whiny people that don't understand early access, if your comments, no matter who's watching this video, if your comments are ever, I can't believe this game is so buggy, what is this dev team doing? You need to stop buying early access games because you don't know what it means. Wait until the game comes out. You obviously cannot handle early access. These developers are working as hard as they can to get through some really difficult bugs that they either didn't know exist or they didn't have a system for being able to fix it from the point that they discovered it. A lot of these things are built into multiple systems, and you just think as like, oh well, this should be a really simple fix. It could be one of the most difficult and problematic things to fix in the entire game. You don't know. You're not a software developer. You also are not working on this project. If you were a software developer, or if you were working on a similar project, you would completely understand what this dev team is going through, and you would give them the leeway to get the thing fixed. It's early access. It's not an excuse. It's a fact. I personally think that companies should stop doing early access games because I think it makes the average gamer can't handle dealing with early access content, and it makes the game look bad when a lot of people get mad about some bug in early access and then just start slamming the game. That's why I think early access should stop. I don't think it's a good experience for the standard user because the standard user does not understand what early access or beta means. They just want to get in and play a game that's polished and finished and ready to go. And if it's not in that state, they just want to whine and cry. And now that we have YouTube and Twitch and X and all these other places where these whiny little bitches can get out there and just run their mouths because they don't understand something, and then they start getting other morons that don't understand things behind them, and then they try to cancel a game or try to turn everyone against a game. I just think it's a bad system overall, and they should just stop early access because people can't handle it.
Like, what's fucking change? There's not even balance changes happening until resets come out, like with new leagues, as if it's a fully released game. I don't fucking get it, man. I don't get it. If PoE 2 stayed with its original scope of new campaign, new gym system, shared endgame, God, it would have been so fucking sick. But like that endgame, it's not even like, oh, just needs time to cook. It's just like every single change feels like it's just a change because it needed to be different than the first game. But I don't understand how it's better. And the phrase meaningful combat, I swear to God, I've heard the phrase meaningful combat 100 times in the last 2 years. PoE 2 has the most meaningless combat of any single RPG I've ever played. It doesn't exist. There is no combat. Every single build, you use one button, you right click, the entire screen explodes. Like, what the
Yeah, see, I don't know what this guy is thinking. To me, the meaningful combat comes from doing the bosses. I have yet to see a build that can just instantly nuke an entire screen, including all bosses on it. And I'm not talking about rare yellow mobs. I'm talking about like act bosses, things along those lines, or the pinnacle bosses. That's generally what PoE is all about, is killing those pinnacle bosses. And so I just don't know what this dude's talking about. There's no version of PoE that has ever existed where you can't just click one ability and kill all normal creatures on the screen unless you just have a shit build. So I have no idea where this guy is going with this. I'm playing Archmage, arguably one of the most powerful builds in the game currently. I use Spark, I use Orb ability, I use Cast on Shock, I use Power Surge, I think is what it's called. I don't have the screen up in front of me. And then I also have Conductivity, which is, reduces the resistances of the creature. So that's 5 skills right there. And I still have 2 more that I can't think of the name of off the top of my head. Blink, I use Blink as well, which, I mean, it's not a skill that you're killing stuff with, but it's still a skill. So, but I've got 7 skills that I have and that I use fairly regularly. What this guy is talking about, as far as, I also played Infernalist, which is the one of the other top builds right now. Multiple skills that I'm using in that one. You're blowing up corpses constantly, you're doing upheavals constantly, you're summoning new followers, I mean, pretty regularly. I mean, you've got multiple different kinds of followers that you're bringing. You're throwing out offerings to boost their power up and things along those lines. I haven't seen a play of any character that is just, oh, you just use this one skill and you never touch anything else. I mean, even some of the rares that I come up on, I'll use multiple skills on them sometimes just because it kills them faster. Like they have a elemental resist or something like that. I don't know. But like I said, to me, it just feels like this guy really doesn't even play this game, which is unfortunate because I know he does based on the way he's talking about it. I know he's put some time into the game, but I don't know. It sounds like he just needs to go back to Path of Exile 1, that PoE 2 is not for him. The bosses, especially in the campaign, require a lot of kind of focus to kill them. A lot of people had really hard times fighting these campaign bosses in the early parts of the game when it first launched, because the abilities and stuff like that were so new and so different from what they had experienced in Path of Exile 1. The dodging system allows you to do so many more things than what you used to be able to do. And, there's a lot of things about the combat that is significantly different. I don't think I've played a build in Path of Exile 1 that wasn't a one-button wonder build. I mean, you had back in the day, you had the Tukahama's pet build, where literally your pets summoned pets. So like they would summon totems, the flame totems that would just spit a jet of flame out, and they just go in a circle and obliterate everything around them. So you literally didn't have to hit a single button. You were just clicking and walking around the map while your pets were summoning pets to kill everything on the screen for you. It was like the dumbest thing I've ever seen. I did a Venom Gyre build where I basically would right click one time and it would shoot out a bunch of projectiles that would bounce off of walls that also launched like 10 projectiles per projectile. So you had like 90 projectiles on the screen at any given time. It would just obliterate the whole screen. You were killing stuff almost 2 screens away from you at any given time. One button wonder, no other abilities that I needed. I mean, so he's making this comparison, but then he's not pointing out the fact that it's made by the same people that made all the one-button wonder kills in Path of Exile 1, which is almost completely what PoE 1 is all about, is one-button wonders. I mean, that's just it. I don't feel that Path of Exile 2 is that way. It's a slower game. I do kind of miss the speed of Path of Exile 1. I miss zipping around the screen sometimes. I kind of feel like these really large maps would be better for PoE 1 characters that can move super fast. And then PoE 2 should have the smaller maps of PoE 1 because you move so slow.
Fuck. Why? Why is that a thing? Why is that still a thing 2 months later? Like, people are gonna be so used to that when they finally take it away, there's gonna be so much complaining. And it is just so boring. Like, killing monsters in that game is so boring because you don't do anything. Even when I tried to, like, not do that kind of setup, like, and intentionally skipped heralds on crossbows, it's the same thing. You press galvanic arrow, the entire screen explodes. Even this character falls under the category of one-button builds. Like, this be referred to as a one-button build in Path of Exile 1. To clear, like, an expedition, before I had the chest, I would, like, Enduring Cry, dodge monster abilities with Shield Charge and Frostblink, right-click, press Val Grace as a defensive button whenever I felt like it, drop Flame Walls on targets, to buff my shit and do more damage, and Sniper Smart and the tanky bears in there. In Path of Exile 2, you right click. I don't know. I feel like splitting the game, like maybe splitting the games has saved Path of Exile 1 from having a bunch of changes that fucked it up, but like, goddamn, dude, that end game is like, it's not even like, oh, it just needs time. It's just doomed. It's fucking doomed, man. I'm so doomer pilled on that end game. I don't know. Campaign's good. Campaign's fun. Everything after the campaign, why? It's intelligent to go full nuke. Have you played a bad build in PoE 2 yet? Because I have. I have. That's how I started.
I will say there are a lot of bad builds in Path of Exile 2, but there's a lot of bad builds in Path of Exile 1. Path of Exile 2 is in early access. You know, they thought things were going to work out a certain way. There are some builds that are in Path of Exile 2 that are overly powerful, and then there are builds in Path of Exile 2 that are just, you'll never get anywhere with them if you try to play them. It's been known for some years at this point that anytime a balance patch hits, it always happens going from one expansion or one season to the next. They have already said that they're going to be breaking up early access into a seasonal style system where they reset everybody's progression and you start from scratch with all of the new balancing changes and things like that so that everybody can experience the game from base going through again because they need to collect this data to determine how they need to get their characters balanced. It's one thing when you create a new system in Path of Exile 1 and you add one or two new skill gems or you add one or two new mechanics. That's very easy to balance on the fly. These guys are literally balancing 100 skills across 6 different classes, across an entire new campaign, playing against multiple different bosses. That's not something that you just look at a little bit of data and figure it out. You got to spend a whole lot of time figuring this out. This is a lot of shit that they have to balance. It's not reasonable to expect them to do this even in a 2-month window. I personally will be very impressed if they manage to get this game to launch in 1 year from the point that early access was launched. I personally think they're kind of having some delusions of grandeur going on there. Hey, more power to them if they can make it happen, but I very much expect this game to last at least a year in early access, if not longer.
Started PoE 2 was in multiple bad melee builds. It's like Titan, if you play it properly, is really good. If you do Herald Abuse, you just one-shot the screen easily. But like playing actual bad melee builds, the pushy, no phasing system genuinely made me almost quit the game on day 3. Like it's.
I will agree with that, but once again, he's talking about stuff that was happening on day 3. We're 2 months in. Creatures pushing you around the map was horrendous. A lot of that had to do with server stability, and normally when a creature hits you and pushes you, it's supposed to push you, not in a straight line, but it's supposed to kind of slide your character, so you eventually kind of roll off from them, so that when they're running straight through, you're not just stuck to the front of them until they decide to stop moving, which was happening a lot. They're supposed to kind of displace you a little bit, so they only push you so far, and then they quit pushing. And that is the way that it's starting to work out now. Plus, there's far fewer enemies that are pushing you around. You don't have the tiny little creatures that are pushing you anymore. You pretty much just have the creatures that are designed to push you, like the real big bulky things that just run through really fast. Those guys will still push you. Almost nothing else pushes you now. I don't understand why he's even bringing that up in the video. It was asked and answered, basically. People complained about it at the beginning. They fixed it rather quickly. It's not been an issue since then. It's stupid to even bring it up at this point. He's just looking for more fire, for more gas to throw on the fire here.
It's just like the clunkiest, least fun combat I've ever experienced when playing bad builds. And then when playing good builds, the thing with Path of Exile 1, when you get to a character that's like fucking just zoomer, cracked, completely broken, the game is still, like, the game keeps getting more and more fun. Because there's one super important thing you can do in this game, and that is scale speed. Like when it comes to how a character functions in ARPGs, there's like 3 categories. There's defense, offense, and speed. And this game, you are constantly being just like thrown into scenarios where you're choosing one of the 3. And anytime you choose one, the other 2 suffer a little bit. In PoE 2, it took me like, by level 90, like my Titan would right-click and one-shot the whole screen. And from that point forward, there's nothing that I could ever do to improve the character. I could play for 1,000 hours, it would never get better. Unless I like migrated to Trade League and bought Temporalis. Because
I find this hard to believe. I personally didn't play a melee build from the beginning because they sucked. It was very apparent very quickly that melee builds were going to be trash and they needed another balance pass to kind of fix them. They're very bottom tier right now. I mean, even the one that he's talking about is pretty bottom tier. And then, but I mean, like with the Archmage that I've got, I'm, like I said, I'm almost 300 hours into the game. 200 of that has been spent playing my Archmage. I'm hundreds, if not over 1,000 maps into the mapping system at the end. I've killed the Pinnacle boss. I've killed Breach Lords. I've killed, stuff from various different events in the game. I've done tons and tons of maps. There are tons of upgrades that I can still get to make my character better, and some of them I will never see because of the expense of them right now, unless I randomly get them to drop or craft them in the game myself. So the fact that he can say that at level 90, I mean, I'm level 93 with my character, about to hit 94 with it, and yeah, I mean, to be able to say, oh, I hit 90 and I literally can't get another upgrade, it's like, dude, either you RMT'd and just bought all of the absolute best gear in the game, or you're full of shit and you don't know how to play you don't know how to build your character properly, because there's no way that you've hit level 90 and you have the absolute best gear that you can possibly get. Now, if you want to make the argument that you can't tune to go one direction or the other, that you're kind of locked into one progression path, and it's like, hey, here's the gear that I've got right now, and the only way I can get to, and the only way I can be better is by getting the same gear with higher rolls on it. Now, I will give you that one, but that's not what he's saying here. He's saying that he has no room for improvement, and I'm flat out calling bullshit on that. I don't see how it's possible.
because there's no way to invest in speed except one dumbass unique item. Oh, I didn't even talk about crafting. Holy shit. That was like a 10-minute rant. I didn't talk about crafting. My god. Gear acquisition. What the fuck? Do I need to... I don't know if I even want to bother. Like, fuck me. Long before PoE 2 came out, we had to talk about why other ARPGs suck compared to Path of Exile 1. Like, one defining factor that was super important to me. If the only way to get gear is to kill a monster and hope it drops a good item, that's really bad. That's really, really, really bad. And that was like D3's problem. That kind of became D4's problem as well. Like, that's not interesting. And PoE1 has like 8 systems that are, that all are good at their own individual crafting thing. Like Essences, Harvest, Delve, metacrafting, scour out being all thing accommodating right now. Like, there's so many different things, and they're all good for different items. And then also in the early game, like day 1, day 2, first 20, 30 hours, like, you wear shit you ID'd off the ground. Like, that has a place too. But it just gets outscaled, which I think is good. Every single map that I run in PoE 2, I have to pick up every single base type of every single item that I could ever wear, put them all in a quad tab, and then eventually when I get enough, I alch them all, / like augment, transmute, regal, whatever, and then 3-to-1 them in the most like tedious fucking clunky way ever. Like the 3-to-1 thing, instead of being a vendor, like the whole vendoring getting split up into like 6 different systems is one of those changes that's the exact same as the well. It is thematically good. It makes sense in universe, lore-wise, it's good. But when I'm playing the game, I don't care about that. I care about fun. And if I want to turn
I agree with this.
21 necrotic armors into 7 rare necrotic armors, I'd rather just vendor all of them at once. I mean, necrotic armors you can't do because
vendor recipes
they don't really fit in the window. But like with smaller things, like if I have 40 breach rings, I could just vendor 40 of them and get back like 16 rares. But instead, it's like I'm gonna spend 2 minutes doing a little 3-to-1 fucking thing with an animation. It's like cool, it looks cool, lore, themes, cool, but like it's so tedious. Tedious is like the key word for everything regarding the endgame mapping and whatnot. Like I do a map, I leave.
Okay, so I just want to touch briefly on some of this stuff. I do agree with him about the vendor recipes. I don't understand why they took those away. I don't like used to you could put was it 40 quality worth of potions into the vendor, and it would give you the glass bauble, which you use to increase the quality on a potion. And if you put 80 worth of potions into a vendor's trade window, then it would give you 2 glass blowers baubles. I don't understand why they got rid of that system. The way that they do it now is you have a salvage table, and anything that has quality or sockets in it, you can use those use the salvage table on those, and they'll break down into armor scraps or blacksmith whetstones or the shards for adding a socket to a piece of gear. But then if you want to take 3 pieces of gear for any reason, like maps, the way that you used to redo maps in Path of Exile 1 is you would combine 3 of them in a vendor, and it would give you 1 map of the next tier. It was a random map of the next tier, essentially. Or actually, it may be of the same tier. It may not be the next tier. It's been a while since I played Path of Exile 1 now, so I may be getting that one confused. I know there was a way to get more maps of the same tier, and there was a way to get another map of one tier higher. I'm thinking combining three gave you a map of one tier higher. But anyways, you could go to a vendor, and if you wanted to put in 12 maps, it would give you four maps as the payout. In Path of Exile 2, in order to get quality off of like the glass blowers, baubles, and stuff like that, you have to use the salvage bench on a bottle that has a quality to it. Now, one thing I will say is you only have two potions in Path of Exile 2. You get one health potion, one mana potion, which means you don't need um, you don't need tons of glass blowers baubles like you did in the past, where you were constantly flipping through potions and you had all kinds of different various potions that gave various buffs, and you had five of them, so you needed a bunch of quality. You needed to be able to raise quality on a bunch of different potions. You don't need that anymore. You have two potions, one health, one mana. There's no buff potions really or anything like that. So you quality up two potions, you're done. You don't need glass blowers baubles anymore. I don't even understand why they're in the game at this point. They should just give you max quality on every single potion, because there's no reason to make you do that for two potions that you will basically never replace once you start getting towards end game. That being said, uh, if you want to combine things together, like three maps, you can combine like three breach rings, for example, together. It will destroy all three of them and give you one brand new breach ring. But you have to do that in a completely separate table. So you have the salvaging table that does a handful of things, and then you have the reforging table, or kind of like the little like little forge thing on the ground that will allow you to combine three items into it, and it will give you something else. Like I said, the three breach rings, you put three breach rings into it, and then it will give you another one. You can put three maps into it. You put tier 13 maps into it, it'll give you a tier 14 map. Like, but you have to do it three at a time. So you put in three, you hit reforge, it takes them, it deletes all the ones in the bottom row, sticks the new map in the top row, and then you have to pull that map out by itself. It's just a whole bunch of extra work. Whereas before, it's like I just put 12 maps in this dude's inventory, I hit sell, and it throws the four maps that it created back into my inventory. I don't have to go and click a button each time to make it function. I don't have to click the finished item to get it to go back into my inventory. I can just set up 12 maps, hold control, click 12 times, click accept, boom, it's all done. So yeah, I 100% agree with that system. They need to fix that shit and get rid of that stupid reforging bench and go back to to vendor recipes. I thought the vendor recipes were way cooler with the concept of having those hidden recipes that people weren't familiar with. It is negative for people that are coming into the game, but at the same time, I think you should have some mystery in your game. You should have some things that that people don't really know about, or they have to learn. I mean, like, I'm not from West Coast, but anybody that's at the West Coast that goes to In-N-Out Burger, you guys know what the secret menu is all about. Like they have off menu items that they just don't put on the menu, but they will make for you if you ask for them. And that's kind of cool, going into a restaurant and being like, oh yeah, I know about this special burger that these dudes make, that if you don't know to ask for it, you don't know it exists. Same kind of concept in this game. I I I liked the concept of discovering all of these different vendor recipes, and then when you go away from the game for a little while and you come back and it's like, oh shit, I know there was a way to make chaos, or was it, what how did I do that again? What was that I needed to do to make that happen? And then you had to go and look it up or something like that. But it was something you had to know that would give you a leg up over people that had no clue. I think having stuff like that in games is a bonus. It gets people to want to dig into your game and learn more about it. By learning more about it, they become more invested in it, and when they're more invested in it, they're more likely to hang around for a while, and then they also like having cool stuff that they can tell their friends about. So I think having that kind of stuff in the game is good, and having these new tables basically creates these items that you're like, well, what is the purpose of this item? And then the game will handhold you and explain to you exactly what those tables do. So they've taken all the really cool vendor recipe items that were hidden from most people, and they've just put it, stuck it right in your face and then explained to you exactly how to do all of it, and they made it tedious in the process. So I get that. Now, as far as the crafting system goes, I think he's completely off base here. This game is starting out small again. They got rid of like 70% of all the crafting resources in the game because it was too fucking complicated. No one knew how to do anything. And honestly, the majority of crafting in Path of Exile 1 was, oh, I'm going to put an augmentation and a transmutation on this white item, so now it's a blue item with two skills on it. Now I'm just going to use orbs of alteration until I get the exact 2 blue skills that I want. Maybe that takes 10 orbs of alteration. Maybe it takes 10,000 orbs of alteration. You just got to sit there and click nonstop until you get the ones you wanted. The developers have already said that they want to get away from that, that they don't find that to be emerging gameplay, is taking an item, sticking it in a crafting bench, and then just clicking a fucking crafting thing on it 10,000 times until they got what they wanted. Same thing with people that were doing 6 link chess pieces and two-handed weapons and stuff like that. It's not fun to do. It's not entertaining to sit there and just repeatedly click trying to get these 6 links, especially when you're a new player and you don't even understand the power of a 6 link, what it does for you or anything else. So I'm all for the changes that they've made. I have been doing crafting. Yeah, you can't force crafting the way that you used to. It's not as easy to just be like, oh, well, yeah, I'm going to do orbs of alteration until I get the exact 2 blue stats that I want, and then I'm going to convert this to a yellow, and then that'll give me an extra stat. And if I don't like that stat, then I can put this other thing on here that'll lock the 2 stats that I like, and then I can re-roll that yellow stat until I get the one that I want for that, and then I can add another stat to it. It was just exceedingly complicated. The majority of people in the game didn't even understand how to make some of the best items in the game because there were way too many systems in there and they weren't well explained. So it was kind of the opposite effect of the reforging table and the salvaging table compared to the vendor recipes. The vendor recipes and having a handful of them, I think, were a good idea. Having shit tons of mechanics and systems in your game that people don't know how to use, but you're expected to be able to use those to make builds that can actually complete the in-game content, because as they added more and more systems to the game, they had to make bosses harder and harder because of how powerful you could make gear. And if you didn't understand how to make that gear, you simply just couldn't do the end game unless you farmed for hundreds of hours to get div orbs to buy a really powerful piece of gear from someone else that knew how to make it and did it in like 10 minutes. That's just not balanced gameplay, and it's not fun for new people or people who are inexperienced. That was only good for people that were like 6-year veterans of Path of Exile 1, which in my opinion is what they're trying to get away from. If you want that insanely deep, large, vast group of things to do, keep playing Path of Exile 1. If you want to start with a new game that's made by the same people and is going to go a similar direction, but they have learned from some of the mistakes that they made in the first one, then play Path of Exile 2.
I scrap certain things based on if they have quality or sockets. I maybe disenchant if I need bigger shards. I vendor if not, but only vendor bad bases that I picked up. Good bases have to go into a certain quad tab, and there's no affinities for any of this, and there never will be because you can't really set them up that way. And then you go back to your main quad tab to dump in all of your other shit, and it's like there's just like so much shit. Like one of the best things about this game in the end game is when you reach a point where you stop picking up 6 sockets, you've outskilled rare items off the ground, and you leave the game or the map. You dump into your quad tab. 90% of your loot is going into affinity tabs. You put in the next map, you go. You can just grind.
Now, I will agree with some of this stuff, like his concept of 90% of your stuff is going into affinity tabs. There are a lot of tabs that we don't have affinities for currently that they really need to get fixed. We need precursor tabs. We need map tabs, which technically both of those can be combined into the same one, in my opinion. We need the breachstone tabs. We need tabs for the I can't think of what they're the expeditions for all the different coinages and stuff like that. So there's a lot of tabs that we need that would have affinity to them that we don't have right now, but they're coming. Like they've already stated that they're planning on making more tabs, and considering the fact that all of the tabs that existed in Path of Exile 1, if they existed in Path of Exile 2, we just got them for free. Like every single tab that you could get in Path of Exile 2, if you had it in Path of Exile 1, you got it. You got every one of your quad tabs, you got every one of your premium tabs, every one of your normal tabs, and every specialty tab that exists in Path of Exile 2, you got all those for free because you own them in Path of Exile 1. I'm assuming when the map tab that they have already announced that they're working on and was supposed to be out in the 0.1.1 patch, but they were having problems with getting it to function properly, I'm assuming that if you have the map tab in PoE 1, when that one launches, you're just going to get it in PoE 2. If they don't, that's going to be annoying, but they should. Same with the breach tab. I'm assuming we'll just get the breach tab when it hits. Things along those lines. Whatever they do with precursors, if they do a specific precursor tab, then you're probably going to have to buy that because it didn't exist previously. But maybe they'll just kind of roll that into the map tab since it's kind of all part of the atlas anyways, and they won't require us to buy a whole new tab for that. I personally think that's the way they should go. But honestly, they've done a lot of really awesome stuff by giving us tons of free stuff that we had acquired in Path of Exile 1. This is a completely new game. They didn't have to give us our map tabs and all of our other tabs. They could have made us buy all that shit again, but they didn't. So if they make one new tab and we have to buy that one, oh no. Imagine a company that makes a game wants to make money off of it. So, if that's the way it works, deal with it. But I haven't had any problems with crafting. I don't know what this guy's doing, like what all the stuff is he's picking up, but I mean the amount of loot that drops in this game is way less than the amount of loot that drops in Path of Exile 1. And then on top of that, they even have tiered items, so you can find a sword, for example, or a bow that says tier 5 on it. And for the most part, what that means is that bow will not have any prefixes or suffixes rolled on it that are less than tier 5 unless that particular type of prefix or suffix doesn't go to tier 5. So you could have a tier 2 suffix on there. If bows can't get a higher than tier 2 of that suffix, then you will see some lower suffixes or lower prefixes on there. As far as I can tell, that's what the problem is causing. Is where the issue is coming from, because a lot of people were saying, oh, tier 5 means it has all tier 5 prefixes and suffixes, and then people started noticing that some of them weren't tier 5. But it tells you that in the name of it. Like, you don't even have to mouse over it. When it drops on the ground, it's in brackets and says tier whatever. You pick that stuff up. You don't pick up the baseline crappy ones. Like, you can, but I mean, it's just gambling. It's no different than when you decide to stop seeing things in Path of Exile 1, you go and change your loot filter to a more strict system so that you see fewer things. This is no different, except this one's actually giving you a marker saying this is much more likely to be a really good item. So you can just filter for the tiered versions and don't even look at any of the normal base versions. The only other thing that I will say is in Path of Exile 1, if you got any quality of an item, whether it was magic or rare, I think even corrupted ones worked, but you could Orb of Annul it, and it would drop it all the way back down to a white tier item, which this was good for using Orbs of Chance to try to level it back up, because an Orb of Chance has to be used on a white tier base level item. And in this game, in Path of Exile 1, it would give you either magic rare or unique on the Orb of Chance, but it would frequently give you something. A lot of the times it was just the crappy magic version that didn't have anything good on it. In Path of Exile 2, Orbs of Chance only have two states. It either destroys the white tier item, or it gives you a unique that particular item can become. So, if you get a sapphire ring, for example, there's at least two different unique rings. If you are successful, then it will turn into one of those two unique rings, and that's it. So the problem that I have with this version of the game is when you get Orbs of Annulment and you use them on an item, it does not revert their quality. So if you use it on a yellow rare item, when you annul it, it gets rid of all the stats on it, but it doesn't turn it back to white quality. It still stays yellow. I don't know if that's a bug or if that's intentional, but that's really frustrating, because that was a crafting system that was basically part of base game in Path of Exile that doesn't exist here. Is you can't try to get really nice uniques from finding a yellow item, hitting it with an Orb of Annulment, and then hitting it with an Orb of Chance. I'm hoping that that's a bug and that they will fix that, or even if it's not a bug, they'll understand that people preferred the old system and they will put it in there. Because, as most of you know, allegedly, the higher your rarity find, the less likely you are to find base white tier items, which makes it difficult to be able to use your Orbs of Chance if you can't ever get the white quality items. I personally am running close to 150 rarity find on gear, which is relatively high, to be honest. I'm still finding white tier items at a decent regularity, so I don't know if that applies as much in Path of Exile 2 as it did in 1. That's one problem that a lot of people are having, is they're like, oh, well, this is the way it worked in Path of Exile 1, so clearly this is how it worked here, and we're getting screwed. And it's like, that's not necessarily always the case.
And map prepping, holy, like I'm currently at like the worst part of Path of Exile 1 map prepping, which is I'm still doing blue maps, my sustain isn't good enough to bulk roll, and it's still like way nicer because I don't have that horrendous fucking Atlas tree. I can run maps that I want to run when I want to run them. I can roll them bulk like 20 in advance and then just grab all 20, put them in the inventory, and just fucking blast. On the Atlas passive tree, there is no Atlas passive tree. You have 30 points and they all say you drop more loot. Like they all say you drop 1% more loot. That is
This is completely incorrect as well. Like to be so fucking blind to something that literally anyone can get in the game and look at once you've accessed maps, like you get the access to use your first map, you can hold control and press U on Path of Exile 2, and you can see the entire Atlas passive tree. It is significantly smaller technically, and this is the part that this guy doesn't understand, is in Path of Exile 1, you had the Atlas passive tree, but it had everything in it, and you could only specialize in specific things because there were so many different seasons. You had all kinds of basic stuff that would increase the quantity of items that you dropped. It would increase the rarity of items that dropped. It would give pluses to map levels for items that you dropped. But that's also mixed in with all the delirium stuff, all the delve stuff, all the the whatever, the expedition stuff. Every single little season event is all on a giant passive map for Path of Exile 1, and you have to pick. You can't do them all. You can't be like, hey, I really love breaches, and I love rituals, and I love the Aztec pyramid thing, and I really like doing the sacred groves, and I like doing ritual stuff. You can't specialize into all of those. You can specialize maybe into half. I think it's even slightly less than half if you want to go really deep and get a bunch of those nodes because of how limited the Atlas tree is from Path of Exile 1. In Path of Exile 2, he's right. You get 30 points. That's all you get to spend in the base tree. You get 30 points. And there's probably 55 different nodes, roughly, give or take a little. And basically 50% of those nodes are well, here's the funny thing is he says every single one of them is about making more maps. For the most part, it's about map quantity, and it's quantity of items dropped, not quantity of maps dropped in most cases. I think there's only like 4 nodes on the entire base passive Atlas tree that actually give you more maps. You can go and look at it yourself if you have access to it, which is why I say it is so stupid for him to say this in a video, because literally anyone that has access to this can go and debunk this immediately by just looking at the passive tree. But so you get to spend 30 points. I mean, like one of the things on the base tree is it makes magic monsters more common. You get more packs of magic monsters. You get more rare monsters on maps. One of them causes any rare creature on the map to duplicate one time. One rare creature on your map will duplicate, and there will be 2 of them at the same time. One of them makes it to where, depending on if you're going into a forest area, a desert area, a swamp area, whatever, when you take this particular node, it gives you a 40% increased chance based on the type of the zone that you're going into to give you different types of things. One of them, I think it's like deserts, give you 40% more jewel sockets, like more things that you can socket into slots. The swamps give you 40% more base currencies. It's like, so there's 5 different categories, and each one of them do something different. That's one of the nodes on the passive tree. So there's tons of things on this passive tree that have absolutely nothing to do with increasing the number of maps. And to be quite honest, the maps drop so regularly in the game, I've actually started getting rid of some of the plus map stuff that I had, which weren't very many of them to begin with, to take other things because I just don't need more maps. I'm getting too many because they seem to be tied to rarity of maps found, or rarity of items found, and item quantity drops. And then the bosses themselves drop. I've had as many as 5 maps drop off of one boss. Every single one of them tier 15, which is the highest tier map that you can have drop in the game. So like in order to get tier 16s through 18s, it's all about having certain modifiers on the node that you're activating and corrupting your map to turn it from a 15 to a 16. So yeah, I mean, like this dude's just completely inaccurate on this statement here. I don't know why he even says it. Oh, and the other thing too is all of the things like rituals and breaches and delirium and stuff like that, those have their own sections. So you've got the big atlas map in the middle, and then around the edges of it you have small trees. One of them is completely about breaches, and the way that you get talent points to spend in that is by doing breaches. You have to do breaches to get splinters. You combine the splinters to get a breach stone. You go do the breach boss. When you kill him, he gives you a book that gives you 2 atlas passives that are used specifically for the breach portion. So, yeah, you only get 30 points for the main tree, but then you have 6 other trees around it, one of them directly related to the pinnacle boss, one of them directly related to all bosses, one of them specifically for delirium, one specifically for breaches, and you get points for those individually by doing those events. So you can really capitalize and tailor your breaches to do exactly what you want them to do. This guy is 100% inaccurate and 100% misleading on what he's saying here. It's ridiculous.
Is one of the things where like that will naturally get fixed as more stuff gets added to the game. They'll expand that. Like that's one of the things you can kind of hand wave away with like, oh, it's EA. Like so much of it is like it's not like the game is just lacking content. That's not the problem. Like most of it is like very intentional choices that are like neat, that look good, but when it comes to actually playing the game, it just feels so fucking tedious and doesn't know what it wants to be. That's where I feel like the gem system currently is. I feel like the gem system doesn't know what it wants to be. Because originally gems were going to be not damage multipliers. Like supports were not going to be damage multipliers. But then they made them damage multipliers, and then they added a 1 support gem limit, which just feels really weird. Like I don't like it at all where it currently is. I feel like either.
Okay, so one thing that I'll come up with on this one is I do kind of agree with his take on the gems, with the concept of the support gems. And when he's saying it's only 1 support gem, what he means is each support gem can only be placed uniquely. So if you create a specific support gem, you can only have 1 of that support gem, no matter which skill it's on. So, like me, I have a support gem on Spark that increases I have a support gem on my cast on Shock that increases the amount of damage that the spell does by 40%, but reduces the casting speed by 15%. The casting speed is irrelevant when Cast on Shock does it because it does it instantaneously, so I don't get that negative, but I still get the 40% bonus to damage, which is awesome. That being said, though, I can't use that specific support gem on any other skill that I'm using. It can, once I've placed it on the one gem, it is on that gem unless I take that one out and move it somewhere else. I can't have that specific support gem duplicated. But I mean, to me, what's really the difference here when you're playing Path of Exile 1 and it's like every single skill that you have that has projectiles, you put, greater multiple projectiles on or lesser multiple projectiles on it. You had like 5 unique skills, and then you had exact copies of almost every single support gem. This one's actually making you choose, and it gives you the ability to tailor your build a little bit more. Eventually, people are going to find the meta, and it's going to be a cookie cutter system, just like Path of Exile 1 is for skills. But at the beginning, people are actually having to learn. It's like, well, is this support gem better for this skill or for this other skill? Like which one's better? And so they're trying to get all that stuff figured out, and for right now, it's fun. By the time the game comes out, unless they add a whole bunch of new support gems, it's you're going to get to a point to where it's just like, this is the meta system. If you have a projectile-based skill, then these are the exact 4 support gems or 5 support gems that you want to put on it, and you just don't use any others. I think that's the point we're going to get to. And I don't really know what they could do to alleviate that problem, because at the end of the day, Path of Exile 1 had the exact same problem. It's like, if you use this skill, here is the support gems that you need on it. You don't use anything else, or you're going to be doing less damage or slower kill times, slower clear speeds and things along those lines. But yeah, I do agree that there's some limitations that I wish I could use some of the same support skills on multiple active skills. But at the same time, that's how you get into these insanely broken high numbers, is because you can just use all of the most powerful damage boosting abilities and just put that on every single skill. And then all that they end up doing is just raising the number. So it's like, well, you could do 100,000 damage, or you put these 5 support gems on here that multiply the damage you're doing by 10. So now instead of doing 100,000 damage, you're doing 1,000,000 damage. But in order to make the game difficult, now we just have to make all the creatures have 5,000,000 damage, so it takes you 5 seconds to kill them. With this system, it's pulling all of the numbers down, and it's stopping people from making these overly broken builds and making you have to think about what you want out of your support skills. So I personally prefer this system a little bit more. To me, it makes creating your skills more like building a deck for playing Magic. You can't just put in a whole bunch of the same card and win. You actually have to have supporting things, and you have to determine. It's like, oh, well, if I get this set of cards, then it really helps this one ability, but I want this other set of cards to help this other ability, or you can make various combinations that work really well, and that's kind of what they're trying to recreate here. They're trying to give you some flexibility and make you think about your build when you're building it. And so far I'm enjoying this system. We'll see where this leads to down the road. Like I said, if we just start getting into meta builds, then I really don't see the big difference other than just all the numbers are going to be smaller. And I don't understand why people are complaining about that. What's the difference between doing 1,000,000 damage to creatures that have 5,000,000 health or 100,000 damage to creatures that have 500,000 health? The time to kill is going to be identical. So, I mean, like, people are just whining over smaller number, like the numbers are too small. It's like, whatever.
Of the other options are better than what it currently is. It's in this like weird like halfway point where like making it so there's no damage multipliers on supports and it's all utility could be a thing that could feel good if it was done right. And just keeping the PoE 1 system of like your supports just make you do more damage also obviously feels good. We've been using it for 12 years. It's been good. But this current in-between thing just creates these really annoying scenarios where I want to use multiple active skills and I can't because there aren't support gems for it. Like I'm sitting there on a 5 link and getting a 6 link wouldn't matter because there's not a support gem that works that actually helps me. And it's like, that feels really weird. And maybe as they add more active gems to the game, that'll be better if they also add more supports. But like, I don't know if they will. We'll see if they will. Oh shit, the mana cost. Wait, I'm not.
It sounds like to me on this one, he just doesn't really understand his class well or something. I have no problems finding supports for certain skills. But I mean, when you think back to Path of Exile 1, you had 1, maybe 2 6 links in your whole build. The majority of your other things, you could put 2 or even 3 skills on a 4-slot item because you did not need supports for most of them. Like, most of the supports in the game weren't effective. So what he's complaining about in Path of Exile 2, where you have some skills that only have 1 support gem on them, or maybe they just don't even have any at all, you had the exact same effect in Path of Exile 1. I don't know why he's complaining about this, unless his complaint is, why is this way? Why don't we have more support gems so we can actually have 5 supports on every single gem, since it's associated with the gem now and not the item that it's socketed into? That I would agree with. I think it's silly to be able to have 5 sockets on a skill gem, but then only have 1 support gem in it because none of the others just do anything for it. But this is not different than the system for Path of Exile 1. I played many builds in Path of Exile 1 where I was just looking for random crap to throw in a socket because I just literally had empty sockets because every single skill that I needed to use were in my 2 6-slot spots. And then I was just throwing random buffs and stuff like that into the gloves and the helmet and the boots and stuff like that. And it's like, most of the time you didn't even need those to have 4 link. You just needed like 2 links and stuff like that because there weren't enough support skills. So not different here. And the argument that he's making in the video, he's basically arguing that this is bad and saying that Path of Exile 1 is better. They're currently identical. So, like I said, if he was arguing that, hey, Path of Exile 2 was supposed to fix this and it didn't, I would agree with that argument. But the argument he's making here is just baseless and bullshit.
I'm not even gonna bother. I'm not gonna bother. The funniest thing was when Karm was bitching in guild chat, he got like an insane weapon. Super good weapon, like fucking 700 top end plus 7. And his Hammer of the Gods cost more mana than his character had. Oh, fuck. Maybe in 5 years. I just want quarterly updates for this.
I don't know what he was talking about with that. Maybe he had some sort of weird reserve or something. Like I said, I don't play the melee classes because I don't think they were well balanced. And some of this stuff will probably change. It needs a balance pass. But yeah, I mean, the concept of not being able to cast a skill, I haven't come anywhere close to having an issue with that with either of the two characters that I have played. They have had zero problems casting a single spell, and I have mana reservation. I reserve 50% of my mana on my Infernalist, and I have zero problems casting any spells, even multiples of spells, no issues at all. I don't reserve any mana on my Archmage, and my mana regen is so fast that I can just hold my finger on the spark button and you basically don't see the mana drop. It drops for like a tenth of a second and then instantly fills back up before the next spell is cast. So it sounds like to me that like these guys just don't know how to build, or the class is really, really broken, which is kind of what I felt like from the beginning. So we'll see.
This game, and maybe port back the gym system, but without the one sport gym on it. Because I like that's genuinely the thing that I've been most excited for since fucking 2020 when they announced that shit. Like that gym system has so much more potential than this one does. I don't like its current, like the way it currently works, but like it could be so good, especially in the campaign. Like, God, dude, gems in the campaign are so fucking bad in Path of Exile 1. Like, you just wear, like, your Act 1 3 link for 4 acts, then you wear your Act 3 4 link for 10 acts, because, like, you don't have currency manipulating tools for your sockets until you're in maps, and it's, like, it's so dog shit in the campaign. Like, that gem system plus new ascendancies, what a beautiful world it could have been. I don't like the investment you have to do on a single gem in PoE 2. So one thing that feels kind of weird about that right now, it feels like the drop rate and the whole way the gem system works would make more sense if you instead 6-linked your character slot, not the gem itself. But the problem with that is you can't trade that. So like as soon as you consume that thing, you can't trade it, which I'm pretty sure is why it doesn't work that way. Be consumable. Yeah, but like things being tradable is very important to them. It always has been. Like you make a good item, you can then trade it later. You 6-link that item, you can still trade it later. So like the gem itself being the thing that gets 6-linked makes sense because then you can trade it later if you want to. But the downside of that is like the ability to test different skills is kind of limited as soon as you're in the end game, because if you 5-link a skill and you kind of like are like, wait, now I want to test this other one that's thematically similar but not quite the same. In this game you can just swap your gems and your thing, but in that game you can't because like the gem itself is the 5-link. I don't really know if that's a bad thing though, but I also generally play the game with pretty, like I plan out everything I'm gonna do very far in advance, so like I don't really run into the negatives of that. I feel like in the campaign you can easily like test 3-links and 4-links constantly and test new skills, and by the time you get a 5-link you should like kind of know what you want, I guess. I don't know. But if you 5-link a shit skill, can it actually sell? I haven't looked at trade markets and whatnot. And can essences please drop 100 rarity mapping views, 1 per for 2 days? I did 100 rarity mapping for like 10 days playtime and didn't drop a single one. I actually had the 154 rarity.
Okay, so an argument that he's making here is about the way that the gem system works. You get Jeweler's Orbs to drop in the game. You have 3 different kinds. Baseline, a skill gem has 2 slots. And then you use a lesser on it, gives it 3 slots, a greater gives it 4 slots, and a perfect Jeweler's Orb gives it the 5th slot. What you sell are those Jeweler's Orbs. No one is really making gems and then selling the completed gem. No one takes a gem, 5 sockets it, and then sells that. I mean, that's probably a little boisterous, I guess, a little inaccurate, but that is not the standard. I'm sure some people do sell that, but when I want to make a better gem, I'm looking for the Jeweler's Orbs to upgrade a gem that I currently have. I'm not going to the trade site and looking for a 5-socket gem that is already created. Now, that may change with some people that are wanting the level 20 gems, because that works just like Path of Exile 1. You take a level 20 gem that's got 20 quality in it, and then you hit it with a Vol Orb to corrupt it, and one of the corruptions can be it raises it to level 21. People may sell those gems, and just like anything else, when it's corrupted, you can't add more sockets to the gem, and you can't add more quality to it. So by definition, in order for that skill to be good, it has to already have 5 slots on it, it has to already have a capped out quality on it, and then somebody hits it with a Vol Orb, turns it into a level 21, and then they sell that one. That's really the only one that I would see where people would actively be working on doing something like that. I don't even know if you can level a gem if it is corrupted. So if you corrupt like a level 15 gem, I don't even know if you can upgrade that gem to 16 anymore. Like I think you're just done. So I haven't actually tried it. I may actually try that just for curiosity's sake. But But yeah, I mean, his whole concept of trying to make this good gym and sell it and stuff like that—that's stupid. No one's really doing that unless you're going for the level 21 that requires some random roll that you would. It's the same reason you would sell any other piece of gear is because it's more rare than what people normally have access to.
For 10 days playtime farming Breach with rares. I got one perfect 6 link on like day 2 on a no rarity character, and I got my last one like a day before I stopped playing. But I think that was just unlucky. Like most people that I saw had better RNG there. Like fucking Alk rolled hardcore self found and had 2 in like a day, and he's just better. Oh, also one other good thing to talk about instead of only talking about the bad things, the Breach boss is fucking sick. That boss is really good. And Arbiter Phase 2 is pretty sick too. I'm so surprised by how little changes are happening though. Like that's the thing that really stands out to me. For an EA game, like there's just like so little being changed. I feel like they're afraid to nerf things because they know when they fix the current broken ass builds, people are gonna be mad. But you gotta rip the band-aid off. I don't think waiting is good. Like when they do
His concept of just like rip the band-aid off, he's making insinuations on what it is that he thinks is going on in the mind of the developers. Dude has no clue. He has no idea what these developers are going through, what's going on with them, what they're thinking, or what their plans are. I don't personally think, and this is completely opinionated, but I also am a software engineer and I at least have some understanding about what it is like to go through developing a piece of software. In my opinion, these guys are doing just like what they have always done, which is they're waiting until they're ready to do a seasonal reset, and then they're going to apply all of their patches because no one wants to go through nerfs in the middle of a season. And I mean, you could kind of argue that they could go ahead and release the buffs for some of the like melee classes that are underperforming. They could go ahead and release those now so that those people could have more fun playing. But at the same time, it's like you want to balance your stuff kind of all at the same time. And if they do a whole bunch of buffs to a specific class and then they go ahead and launch that, then they're having to watch that class and quickly fix things, which takes development time away from fixing all of the other classes and all of the other mechanics, and stuff in the game that they're also wanting to iterate on. So, I mean, if they buff warriors, then it's just going to be that much longer before they can nerf, classes that are too broken or buff another class. Like you want to do all of your changes as much as you can in a big pile, and then you release it all, and then you're basically just on standby because you're fixing a whole bunch of different balancing issues that are popping up, and you're watching all that stuff at the same time. You're not trying to do 3 things at once. You don't have a small team working on making, like buffing a class while another team is working on launching that material and another team is having to watch the changes that are coming, all of that. Your team is all working, together trying to make this stuff happen because there's multiple different systems involved, and anytime somebody makes a change, it has to go through basically a certification or a pass-through with all of the other systems leads to make sure that it's not going to cause a different problem somewhere down the road. So it's not a good idea to have tiny individual teams making sweeping changes to your game without working with the other teams to make sure that it's not going to cause some other large problem. So the fact that they're doing all of this balancing stuff at once, they're going to do a seasonal reset and then launch a whole bunch of new stuff into the game as far as tons of changes, balancing issues, nerfing some classes, buffing some classes, those kinds of things. I think they're doing it perfectly fine the way that they're doing it. They've already done one massive patch from being back from the holidays. I expect there to be another one in the relatively near future. Probably within the next couple of weeks. I expect to see some other large sweeping changes to the game, and they're actively communicating with everybody and kind of telling everyone what's going on behind the scenes. So I don't know. I think this dude's just got a lot of baseless arguments that he doesn't know what he's talking about. He's basically saying, here's what I think's happening, and they just need to rip off the Band-Aid and do it. It's like, dude, you don't know what they're thinking, and I don't personally think that what you think that they're doing is exactly what's happening. They're not afraid of nerfing shit. They already nerf stuff. They're not afraid of that at all. They nerf the shit out of stuff all the time in Path of Exile 1. I can't count how many times in one season they've had a really awesome build that I wanted to play in the next season, and they nerfed the shit out of it. So I didn't get to play it in the second season, and maybe I didn't get to play it in the first season either because I did some other build, and then I was like, oh man, that's an awesome build. I'm going to play that next season, and then the shit gets nerfed out of it, and I can't play it. These guys have no problems with nerfing stuff when it needs to be. That's not what's going on, in my opinion. And the fact that he's trying to overlay that opinion as that it's factual and they just need to rip off the band-aid, that's just stupid. I don't know why he's saying it.
The reset, it's gonna or like when they do the nerfs, it's gonna be with an economy reset, which is like the obviously the ideal solution for a finished game. That's how it always should be in a finished game. But I just feel like first impressions of like how a game plays is like really important. And if you just leave it for, I mean, we're coming up on 2 months, and we don't even have a date yet for Druid Huntress. So like, is it gonna be 3 months before the first reset? And if so, like 3 months of combat being like what I have to assume is nowhere near where they want it to be. There's no way they're happy with the current combat in PoE 2. It's not even just Herald of Ice though. Like that's a big one, but like even non-Herald builds.
Like once again, I think this is kind of baseless. I think he is unhappy with combat in the game. I don't have a problem with the game, and if you go on Steam and look at the Steam records, this game, as far as I know, to this day, it's been like a week since I've checked. So, oh my God, 1 week less out of an 8-week window. This game has had the most retention out of almost any game that has been released on Steam from the point that it released until now. It's basically lost no player base. So it's like this guy just has a very unique opinion. He is unhappy with the game, and I personally think he just needs to go back and play Path of Exile 1 because he can't handle early access content. He's looking at this from a state of play of like, oh, you guys need to be fixing all of this stuff right now, and all of this shit needs to be changes, and this, that, and the other. And this development team on the back end is looking like, hey, we've made an announcement that this is going to last 6 months to a year. We need to fix some of these balancing changes, but some of them are going to be made completely irrelevant, so they don't want to make the changes because it will end up getting balanced out with new features and things that they're adding into the game. They've already said that they have more events planned for later stages of the game. Basically they're going to bring in more content from Path of Exile 1, more of the seasonal events to add more depth to the game. They just didn't have it ready for this engine. It all has to be recreated. This is not just slap a new coat of paint on the game and all of the old systems just work. They all have to be rebuilt from scratch, and that takes time. And then when you're looking at balancing changes, you can't just run through there and go make all kinds of balancing changes, because then when you add the other systems later in the game, then you're going to have to revert a bunch of those changes back, because then it's going to make certain things too overpowered, because they know what's coming in the game in the future, while we're all sitting here and we're just looking at this from the outside in, and we can't see exactly what's going on, and we don't know exactly what they have planned. It's just absolute bullshit to try to label what's going on inside of a development company when you have no fucking clue. Like, this dude is totally clueless.
Kind of do the same thing. Like Galvanic Arrow does the same thing. Lightning Arrow without Herald of Ice can do the same thing. It's a little bit weaker, but just like the general, like I just like they talked so much about combos, about like you're gonna use multiple skills in PoE 2, and I haven't even come close. Like I haven't played a single build that uses even half the amount of skills that Path of Exile 1 uses. And I played.
This is another thing where he's talking about combos. Once again, he clearly doesn't seem to understand what they're talking about when they were talking about combos. Was the passive weapon set skills or skill points, which I have another video if you want to go check that out so you understand how that system works. I highly suggest going and doing that if you don't understand it. I don't have many videos, so it's easy to find, but what they were talking about was the fact of in Path of Exile 1, you had weapon set 1 and weapon set 2, and basically the only thing that people use weapon set 2 was for sticking a 6-slotted item in it, regardless of how many links it had, so that you could just fill it with gems so that it would level those gems in the background. No one ever actually switched to their secondary weapon skills. But with these weapon passive skill sets that they made, you can have your passive skill tree built, and you can take I think it's 24 skill points, and you can split them in 2 different directions. One of them is active if you have weapon set 1 turned on, and then the other one is active if you have weapon set 2 turned on. Basically what that means for my Archmage, I'm not going to go super deep into it. Go watch the other video. This one's already getting insanely long. But basically, when you cast all of my regular abilities, they use one set of the tree, but then when I cast curses, it flops to my secondary weapon, which changes my skill tree, that instead of having a bunch of plus lightning damage, it has a bunch of plus duration and plus effectiveness of curses, so that when I hit my middle mouse button to cast my curse ability, it flops over and it makes my curses insanely powerful. I apply curses to stuff, and then I hit my other button to cast Spark, which auto switches my weapon back to my main weapon, and that in turn auto switches my skill tree back to all of my lightning damage, and now I'm doing buttloads of lightning damage. If you want to understand that system, check the other video. It'll tell you exactly how the system works, shows it, point to point. But yeah, I mean, this guy just doesn't even understand what he's talking about when he's referring to them talking about combos. I am not aware of a build that does not use multi weapons. If you're not using them, you are not even close to unlocking the power of what your class can do. Maybe there's a class that I haven't played and I haven't read about. Maybe it's really bad for melee characters. I find it hard to believe, but every single other top end character that I've seen uses the weapon passive set system. So, like, this dude's just clueless.
Played every single archetype. Like, I think the build that I play that has the most character input in terms of like you press buttons to kill monsters is Spark. Spark, which is like historically kind of considered to be a non-interactive playstyle. Like, you just press a button and the whole screen gets covered in proj. But somehow Spark, from like a character input point of view, has been the most engaging combat of any of the, or like the most engaging while still being fun combat. Because it's pretty fucking engaging to get your shit pushed in by trash monsters that can push you across the screen whenever they want on a melee character that can't kill anything. It's pretty engaging, it's just not fun. Didn't play minions. I did play minions until Act 3. I played minions until Act 3, learned that if you outrange them, they despawn, and logged out. But they fixed that, apparently, so I might try again soon. When they add specters, maybe I'll try minions again. We'll see. 326 when? How long does this go on YouTube? I don't know. I normally, like, the reason it's taking me like 2 months to really put it all into words is because I really don't like being negative. I want to enjoy things, but like, goddamn. And I just wanted to like wait, and give them time to.
All right, so yeah, this is basically into the video. I need to actually go live here. This has taken a lot longer than I expected it to be. It's only a 15-minute video, and I turned it into an hour and a half. But I mean, this is one of the things when people put out these small videos, they don't take the time to actually think about what it is that they're doing. They try to cut out too much. Maybe some of this would have made more sense, but this dude made so many edits in this video that you couldn't even get a straight train of thought on what he was thinking. So, I mean, I'm sorry the video is an hour and a half long, but at the same time, it's like there was a lot of information to cover in here, and he had a lot of bad information, and a lot of it took a decent amount of time to explain and to give examples of why his information was bad. So yeah, I mean, just because it's a short video doesn't mean it's a good video. People should have higher attention spans. If you want to know the correct information, it's an information download, and that's not something that's fast to do. I mean, it takes a while to talk about all the things that are wrong. But yeah, I mean, just like him talking about saying like, oh, I don't generally like being somebody that's, pessimistic essentially about what's going on with stuff. It's like that's basically all this dude did in this entire video is bitch about this game. He clearly does not enjoy the game, and he should not be playing it. Go back to Path of Exile 1, try Path of Exile 2 again when it comes out. When you get on here and you rant and you rave about a game that you like don't even understand, like multiple times in this video I've pointed out where he has no idea what he's even talking about, and it can be 100% debunked by just going in and opening a window and reading the information yourself. It's plain and clear cut as day. It makes you look like an idiot. So it's like, this is a super short video. He should have made it significantly longer and really explained himself, had a better thought process on what exactly it was that was going on here. I will post the link to the original video below this video, so you guys can, if you want to go back and watch the uninterrupted 15 minutes worth of it, you're more than welcome. Yeah, like I said, this guy just seems to not know what he's talking about. He hasn't explored deep enough into the game. He doesn't know all of the systems in the game. He really just wanted to come over here and play Path of Exile 1 with a new coat of paint slapped on it and some very minor changes. That's not what this game is. I hope that is not what this game becomes. I don't need Path of Exile 1, the second phase. It's like, I don't need a remaster of Path of Exile 1. I like Path of Exile 2 because it's a different game, it's a different system, and it should be used to attract a different audience. I do like both games. I like Path of Exile 1 for one reason. I like Path of Exile 2 because it is not that reason. It's different. I'm fine with both games, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that will play both games, but I don't think it should be mandatory that if you loved the first game that you must love the second game as well, and that if you don't love it, that clearly it's just the game that's shit and not that you have a limited viewpoint on what games are all about. I think Path of Exile 2 is a wonderful game. Like I said, I've got close to 300 hours played into it right now. I'm not feeling the need to slow down whatsoever. I'm at the point now to where in order to get an upgrade for my character, it's like 100 or 150 div plus if I want to buy it from another player. So really limited on what I can get to upgrade my character. I'm still having a blast with it. I'm still enjoying going through the maps and just going through the motions and figuring out how to min max things and how to get faster at things that I'm wanting to do, how to improve, optimization on how to deal with gear and stuff like that. I have a whole video that I posted up for how to improve your loot. It's pretty long-winded, just like this one is. So if you like having something running in the background that you can just listen to, then I suggest going and checking out that video if you want to learn how to make your loot a little bit better. It's really for people that are newer to the game and don't really understand a whole lot about Path of Exile 1. If you're a hardcore veteran Path of Exile 1 player, the video is probably not going to teach you a lot that you don't already know. But for all the new people that are coming in that are experiencing this new and mostly different game, it would be very beneficial for you if you don't understand how to improve loot and how to optimize your progress as far as collecting loot off the ground and how to limit what you see and all those kinds of things. So yeah. Once again, like I said, I'll link this video in the bottom. You guys are more than welcome to go and check out the original video. I hope you guys found this video entertaining. I hope I kind of pointed out a whole bunch of flaws and gave enough reasonable sources as to why a lot of the things that he was saying were wrong. There are some things that he said that I agreed with. I pointed those out when I was going through as well. He's not completely baseless in the whole video, but a lot of it, like I just don't know where I don't know where he came up with a lot of this stuff from. So yeah. Post in the comments down below. Let me know what you think about the game in general. If you agree more with his take or if you agree more with my take, I would love to see what your guys' opinions are. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. I usually stream about 4 nights a week starting at 8 p.m. Eastern, which was about 20 minutes ago. So I need to, like I said, get over to that live stream. But come check me out on the live stream. I love having conversations with people. So feel free to come and give me your take there as well. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video and we'll see you next time.